The novel Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky is one of the most powerful psychological stories ever written. It explores guilt, morality, redemption, and the battle between logic and conscience inside the human mind. But this isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about what happens after the crime, inside the soul. A brilliant mind in desperation. The story takes place in the dark, crowded streets of St. Petersburg and follows a young man named Rodion Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov is a former student who lives in extreme poverty. He is intelligent, proud, and deeply isolated from society. But his greatest struggle is not financial. It is philosophical. Raskolnikov develops a dangerous theory. He believes that humanity is divided into two types of people. The first type are ordinary people, those who must obey laws and social rules. The second type are extraordinary individuals, people like Napoleon, who can break moral laws if their actions ultimately benefit humanity. According to Raskolnikov, these great men have the right to commit crimes if it leads to a higher purpose. But there is only one way to prove whether he belongs to this extraordinary category. He decides to test his theory. The crime. Raskolnikov targets a greedy and cruel pawnbroker, an old woman who exploits the poor. In his mind, killing her would actually help society. He convinces himself that the money he takes could be used for good. So one evening, he carries out the murder. But the plan quickly collapses. Unexpectedly, the pawnbroker's innocent sister walks in during the crime. Panicking, Raskolnikov kills her as well. In that moment, his philosophical experiment turns into a horrifying reality. And from that point forward, the real punishment begins. The psychological torture. After the murder, Raskolnikov doesn't feel powerful. He feels trapped. Instead of freedom, he experiences paranoia, fever, anxiety, and crushing guilt. His mind becomes a battlefield. He constantly fears being discovered, yet at the same time he seems to unconsciously reveal clues about his crime. Dostoevsky masterfully shows how guilt can destroy a person from the inside. The law hasn't caught Raskolnikov yet, but his conscience already has. The detective game. A clever investigator named Porfiry Petrovich begins to suspect Raskolnikov. But instead of arresting him immediately, Porfiry plays a psychological game. He engages Raskolnikov in deep conversations about morality, crime, and justice. Little by little, he pushes Raskolnikov toward the truth. This cat-and-mouse battle becomes one of the most intense psychological duels in literature. Porfiry believes something important. True justice doesn't come from punishment alone. It comes when a person confesses and accepts responsibility. The light in the darkness. Amid all the suffering, one character becomes a symbol of hope. Her name is Sonia. Sonia lives in poverty and has been forced into a life of sacrifice to support her family. Despite her hardships, she remains deeply compassionate and faithful. When Raskolnikov finally reveals his terrible secret to her, Sonia doesn't respond with hatred. Instead, she urges him to face the truth. She tells him that redemption is only possible if he confesses and accepts the consequences. Her kindness becomes the moral compass that Raskolnikov desperately needs. The true punishment. Eventually, Raskolnikov realizes something devastating. His theory about extraordinary people was wrong. He believed he could step beyond morality. But he discovers that no one can escape their conscience. The real punishment was never prison. It was the torment of knowing what he had done. In the end, Raskolnikov confesses and is sentenced to Siberian exile. But this is not the end of his story. Redemption. In Siberia, something unexpected begins to happen. For the first time, Raskolnikov starts to feel genuine remorse. He slowly begins to understand compassion, humility, and love. Sonia remains loyal to him and continues to visit him during his imprisonment. Through suffering, Raskolnikov starts to rebuild his humanity. Dostoevsky suggests that even the darkest soul can find redemption. But only after facing the truth. The core message. Crime and Punishment asks one of the deepest questions in literature: can a person justify doing evil for a greater good? Raskolnikov believed he could rise above morality. But his journey proves the opposite. No intellectual theory can silence the human conscience. True freedom doesn't come from escaping moral laws. It comes from accepting them. Final thoughts. More than 150 years after it was written, Crime and Punishment remains one of the most powerful psychological novels ever created. It's not just a story about a murderer. It's a story about guilt, justice, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. And it reminds us of a timeless truth: the greatest courtroom is not the law. It is the human soul.